I couldn't pretend to know what Vice President Harris is feeling. None of us could. You know, she was so committed to being a loyal governing partner to President Biden. And today begins the convention that is the process of nominating her as the Democratic presidential nominee for this country. And so it is an exciting experience I could imagine. I have spoken to her. She feels and sounds incredibly determined to be a leader that offers a vision forward for our country and for the American people, a way to unify us behind not just our fears and the things that we are concerned about, but also about our hopes and our dreams and the things that we can accomplish together. And so it must be incredibly exciting for her family. But I know this is a moment that she is determined to meet, and one that she, I think, will meet with great grace.
Well, Senator, of course, none of us can actually get inside the Democratic nominee's head at this time. But could you take us inside yours, knowing that before you were a senator, you ran Emily's List? It is a group literally dedicated to get women elected into office. Now we have not just a woman, but a woman of color getting ready to formally accept the Democratic nomination for president. What does this week mean to you?
You know, I'm not sure that I know exactly what it will mean. I am so focused on making sure that I do everything I can to make this moment not just a moment that happens as a nominating experience, but an experience that actually leads to victory for the country in November. But you're right. I have worked to help to elect Democratic pro-choice women up and down the ballot at all levels of government, and to, again, be able to say that the United States, at least one party, is putting forth a woman and a woman of color for the American people to consider for presidency is quite powerful, not just for my daughter, but truly for America's daughters to be able to see themselves once and for all in the highest position possible in our country. It is a moment of pride for me, and I think it will be a moment of great pride for the American people.
Senator, what is Joe Biden going to tell the room tonight as he passes the baton, the cliche that we keep using for this inflection point in the campaign? There's been reporting that he's very upset about what has happened, but of course it's his job to strike a positive tone. What should be his message? What are we going to hear from Joe Biden?
Look, this is, I expect that we're going to hear the words of a proud statesman who has served his country for the last 52 years, made sacrifice after sacrifice to help us win back the soul of our very nation. He said that was why he was running in 2020. This is a president who will have accomplished by the end of his term some of the most historic legislation ever, changing the trajectory of so many industry and opportunities for the American people, whether we're talking about the cancellation of student loan debt to the inaction of the CHIPS and Science Act, the biggest investments in climate change in our nation's history, doing the work of the PACT Act and taking care of our veterans and their health care. So, look, this is a moment, I think, where President Biden will have the opportunity to not only talk about what he's accomplished, but to thank the American people for trusting him to lead in such a hard, tough moment. And I think he's going to commit to continue to finish the job, that we have a lot more work to do. He has another 5 months left in his term. He's going to be focused on continuing to run through the tape. But he's going to be exciting us and imploring us to continue to fight for the democracy that future generations in this country truly deserve.
Well, and of course, that fight will become Kamala Harris's throughout the remainder of this campaign. And then, of course, if she ultimately wins when she takes office in January of 2025, we are starting, Senator, to get at least the outlines of the kind of policy that she would like to pursue when it comes to the economy. And I ask you this knowing that you sit on the Senate Banking Committee. Some of the policies she put forward last week have been described as potentially inflationary. Donald Trump has suggested they borderline on communism, calling her now comrade. Kamala, are the ideas that she put forward really realistic?
Look, I think the former president has tried his attempt at name calling against everyone who dared to take him on. And this is a presidential candidate, vice president in Kamala Harris, that is doing just that. Taking him on and putting forward visions and plans that actually bring our country together, that address some of our highest cost-driving issues that working families face today, the cost of housing, whether they want to own or rent, the cost of prescription drugs, whether they're taking cancer medication, or an elderly who's just trying to manage their diabetes, or just trying to make it every single day in the grocery store, buying bread and eggs and chicken to make sure that their family has food to eat. Yes, she has put forth an ambitious, I believe, practical approach that is about how do we listen to what the American people need from government and actually make plans to act. Are the plans going to turn out exactly the way that that she put forth in her proposal in North Carolina? This is all going to be a process. She said herself what she wants to do is bring stakeholders together. She wants to bring industry and legislators and unions together to figure out how we try to solve some of these problems. I don't know what former President Trump is to do any of that. He hasn't said. He just says that he wants to create what in essence is a tax for the American people to raise their costs. So I'd rather be a part of a process to find a solid solution for the American people than some pipe dream tax that's going to raise the cost for every American person. And I think every day about my mother on a fixed income, 71 years old. I know she can't afford Donald Trump's tax.
Senator Butler, we have breaking news on the terminal with regard to Israel, and this is going to be important for the delegates on the floor of this convention. Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, says Benjamin Netanyahu has accepted a ceasefire proposal that they've been working on for days now. This just crossed the terminal. Netanyahu accepting latest Gaza proposal. He's speaking with reporters right now, talking about this U.S.-backed bridging proposal for a ceasefire, calling on Hamas to do the same. Your party platform, Senator, also calls for, quote, immediate and lasting ceasefire deal, unquote. If this comes to fruition, if we do have a ceasefire deal, are those 30 uncommitted delegates on the floor going to become committed to Kamala Harris?
You know, I don't know. I surely hope so. I wouldn't venture to speak for them, but let me just first say, thank God. The tragedy that we have been seeing that began on October 7th and has continued in the lives of innocent Palestinian families. I am glad that Joe Biden has remained on the case and has not let a night go by where he wasn't working towards accomplishing this ceasefire. If that is the case, this is a great and important day for the presidency of President Biden and a great moment of, I think, relief for so many families, Israeli and Palestinian families alike.
Well, and certainly it could be a moment of relief if you are actively campaigning for president, knowing that this is an issue, Senator, that has divided your party. And we've seen that on display with the delegates that Joe is alluding to, with the protests that will be here in Chicago. If a ceasefire can be accomplished, what's the biggest hurdle for your party to get over when it comes to voter turnout or to ensuring a victory for Kamala Harris?
Yeah, look, this is a war and a conflict that is beyond party politics. Both sides have taken their own positions. What we have seen President Biden and Vice President Harris work towards is that lasting ceasefire, the return of those hostages. And hopefully as the details of this deal becomes more clear, that we will have accomplished those things. And let's focus on these are lives that have been lost here. Tens of thousands of lives, the rape and torture of Israeli families on October 7th. I'm not going to jump into a conversation about politics when we're talking about people's lives. Yes, there has been disagreement in our country about this, but let's celebrate what is happening here. There are hundreds of Americans and Israelis and others that are actually going to be able to come home after nearly a year let's celebrate what we're accomplishing and recognize the diplomacy and the committed leadership that President Biden and Vice President Harris have brought, and all of the global leaders who have leaned in here to help make this happen.